Johnson County Library is now fine-free. Find out more at jocolibrary.org/fine-free.
The e-resource of this episode is Law Depot Legal Forms. Whatever your legal need, Law Depot can help. Law Depot provides customizable legal templates with step-by-step guidance. Find do-it-yourself legal documents, forms, and contracts for estate, real estate, financial, business, family. You'll find Law Depot at jocolibrary.org/research/lawdepot-legal-forms.
The premise is teenagers break into a house of an elderly man and things go terribly wrong from there. It's small town Minnesota. It's creepy, chilling, that gritty factor that people like in their thrillers.
Joco Library Uncovered.
Dave, I've got a question for you.
Okay, what's that, Charles?
What do you find thrilling?
That is a very good question. I will say this. Skydiving.
Skydiving?
Being shot out of a cannon.
Okay.
Riding a motorcycle 180 miles per hour on a closed track. Zip lining. Mm-hmm. All of these, by the way, are things I've never done and never will do.
I mean, for some people, though, those are thrilling things that they like to do.
For sure. Do you know another thrilling thing that people like to do?
What's that?
Read.
That's true.
And some of these readers like to read thrillers.
Yeah. So today we have our Reader's Advisory Librarian Gregg Windsor back with us today for a collection deep dive.
He's bringing in some thrilling friends.
To talk about thrillers.
And I'm thrilled.
Yeah, thrillers.
And if we had a budget, we would totally be playing Michael Jackson Thriller right now.
Yep.
But no, don't have the money for that.
So I say let's get to it, but first,
some news.
Library news.
So we're back again with another collection deep dive, and we've got Gregg with us. Gregg, hello.
Charles, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Thank you so much for having us on today. We love coming here to do the collection deep dives with y'all.
Yeah, and could you introduce who you have with you here today and your topic?
Absolutely. First of all, we're going to talk about mysteries and thrillers. And even though most people kind of conflate the two, they might be both in this very same section of your local bookstore. Those are two genres with very different purposes. Mysteries are going to be your Sherlock Holmes type of things where an investigator follows clues and the reader is invited to kind of follow along and solve the crime. It's more of a puzzle, right? And the concept of fair play, of the readers being able to solve the crime along with the detective. Whereas thrillers deal much more with emotion. They deal more like with chases and things being under threat. And that sense of fair play isn't necessarily there with thrillers. You have unreliable narrators and lots of red herrings and really things to kind of emotionally hook the reader to get them involved. And what we're going to do today is talk about genre, or books rather, that combine both of these genres. A little bit of mystery, a little bit of thriller, equal, usually awesome books. And with me today are going to be two of our staff librarians who are going to be talking about these with us. Piepie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Thanks for being with us and listening to our recommendations. My name is Piepie. I'm an adult information specialist at the Monticello branch.
And Bet, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Bet, and I also get to work with Piepie as an adult information specialist at Monticello.
And as we go through our book picks today, just know that all of these are going to be in a BiblioCommons list in the show notes that you can find by going to jocolibrary.org/uncovered. Bet, let's go ahead and get started with you. What is the first book that you want to talk about today?
My first pick is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, and it came out in 2021. It's a standalone, which means it's not part of a series.
Sure.
And it's basically a revenge thriller. And the thing that, like, I'd heard about S.A. Cosby for a while, but I was completely captured just by the plot of these two fathers that are trying to avenge the murder of their sons.
Yeah.
Which that alone is interesting. But
Sure.
then you get the fact that they're two ex-con fathers. One, Ike, is black and Buddy Lee is white. And their sons were married to each other. And neither of them had a good relationship with their sons because of that. And so suddenly they're faced with this story of like how much they love their sons and how they need to avenge their deaths and figure out what happened. But it has this like Quentin Tarantino like violence escalation and just keeps going. Like you have no idea what you're in for, and it just gets deeper and deeper. But the thing that I loved the most about it was how much you care about these characters and see that they're not, you can't just write them off. Mm-hmm. Every time you think you can, something deeper comes to light. And it was just utterly fascinating.
Bet, I'm so glad you picked this one. I am a huge fan of S.A. Cosby. I love all of his books, especially this one. And really, the author is from kind of a rural Virginia community, and he really brings out kind of the cultural differences and as well as, class, race, all of the history of this community, all kind of wrapped in the 70s revenge thriller hook. And if you like that type of book, really try S.A. Cosby. He's going to be a great one to get a hold of. And also in that vein, the next book you want to talk about is also dealing with slightly older individuals, but a completely different type of book, right?
Yes. So The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman is one of my all-time favorite books that came out in 2020. And it's the first in a series. The fourth one is actually coming out this September. And there is a film in development for the first book. But it was one, and this is a great one for audio. I remember listening to it and just, I could not stop laughing. Or like I often listen to books while I'm gardening or something like that. And suddenly I would have to stop what I was doing because I needed to be with these characters and figure out what is happening.
So who are these characters? Tell us about them.
There's four, and they say they're like in their 70s or 80s, four characters that are all in a English retirement village. So you have Elizabeth, who keeps mentioning the Official Secrets Act, if anyone tries to figure out about her past. Joyce is like a former nurse and like that like sweet old lady that like everyone loves. Ibrahim was a former psychiatrist and is always like very like in his head about things. And then Ron is a former trade union leader, and he's like one of those like all bluster and like you would never imagine these four people becoming friends, and yet you watch it happen, and in a very real way. And
all of these characters kind of bring their personalities and backgrounds together to investigate kind of crimes in their little retirement village.
Yeah, initially it's just like kind of to keep their minds active. They're like going through cold cases, but then a real murder or like a fresh murder, I guess, happens. Sure. And so they decide that they're the ones that are going to solve it. But it's like, this is one of those books and series where it's not just those four. Like those four characters are amazing, but the whole cast of characters, like every character that comes in, it's amazing.
That's great. Piepie, let's turn to you real quick. You have two books that you want to talk about as well. Why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Yeah. My first one is The Mostly True Story of Tanner and Louise by Colleen Oakley. She's one of my favorite authors. This is her new release, so I knew I had to pick it up. So it's a delight.
So tell us, this one has some similar themes to Thursday Murder, but completely different. As one of the protagonists is an older woman.
Yeah.
Right?
Louise is in her 80s and Tanner is in her 20s. So it's very much an elderly woman, a younger woman, sort of one of those odd couple type of pairings.
Now, what makes this a mystery or a thriller? What kicks us off here?
Through a series of events, Tanner finds herself without a job, and so she finds herself working for the elderly Louise. And Louise is just different. There's locks everywhere. She has the ability to speak all of these random different languages, and Tanner doesn't know what to think. A news story has hit about a jewel heist that happened years ago, and of course the suspect looks like her brand new employer, this, sweet looking 80-something.
Who's obviously hiding some secrets.
Right. It's a road trip. It's a thriller. It's just really fun to read.
That sounds like a lot of fun, and it could bring in readers who kind of more maybe into kind of women's fiction or kind of more of a cozier type of vibe, but it definitely brings that thriller.
Yeah, the cover is colorful. It's summery. It's a good thriller if you just want a little bit of suspense. Don't want to dip your toes too much into that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this next book that you wanted to talk about features, the previous book features an older woman and a younger woman. This one kind of focuses more on the younger counterpart, right?
Yes.
Tell us about this one.
Yeah, it's This Golden State by Marit Weisenberg. It's a young adult book. It definitely has those mystery thriller elements. It's about a family on the run all the time. Every city means a different name for all four of them, parents, a 17-year-old, and then she has a younger sister. So Poppy lives with her parents and younger sister, and she never gets the chance to make friends or, be that typical normal high schooler. And all of this changes when she takes a DNA test and uncovers family secrets. So it's very plot driven. You get invested in these characters. Who is Poppy? Why are they constantly running? Her parents don't tell her anything.
Yeah.
So it's a very good young adult thriller that I highly recommend. I heard about it from a friend in one of my book clubs, so
it's good
had
for
to read
that.
it.
So it has that mystery element that really sucks you in.
Definitely.
And
yeah. It's a quick read. I read it all in one day. I just had to know what would happen.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, getting back to Bet, why don't you tell us about the next book on your list that definitely has more of a historical fiction feel to it?
Yeah, so this is also a teen book, Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wayne.
That one is huge.
Yeah. And it came out in 2012, but I feel like people are still discovering it today, which is really fun. Mm-hmm. But it is not your typical mystery, and nor is it just another World War II novel. It's one of the most cleverly written books I've ever read. It's all about female power and female friendship, and it's basically a book split in parts. So the first part, you are with Julie, and she is captured by the Nazis in France, and you're getting her story through journal entries. And then the second half, you're with Maddie, who was a pilot, and you're getting the plot happening as
how she got up to that point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so the whole time there's you don't know what's actually true. And so you have that bit of unreliable narrator, or is it, and there's just so much. But the characters, again, if you can't tell, I love characters. But they
really
just are so good. And again, even the Nazis, they're not just cardboard cutouts. They're interesting, and you can see what's kind of going on behind the scenes. They have
their own motivations and their own internal dialogue.
Totally.
And it adds to the plot. That is a book that's been on my list forever, but sadly I've never gotten around to it, so I think you sold me on
I just recently checked it out myself, so I'm excited. I'll have to talk to Bet once I'm done.
Of course. Okay. So, Bet, let's continue. What is the next book that's going to be on your list? It also has kind of an interesting or an interesting slant to it, right?
Yeah, so this one is Resurrection Bay by Emma Vizkich, and I actually discovered this one because a lot of times I'll try to find books that are kind of out in a genre I like, but outside my norm, like a different type of character or a different type of author or whatever. So this one, the main character is Caleb, and he's profoundly deaf, and he wears hearing aids, but most of the time he's basically trying to lip read, which that can be hard in a normal, if you're a student, if you have a normal type of job, but he's a private detective. And at the start of this novel, he discovers an old friend that's been killed, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. So suddenly lip reading to get out of dangerous scrapes or all of that kind of stuff. The stakes are way higher for something like that.
Sure.
And the other thing I loved about what the author does is she is telling everything from Caleb's perspective, and she'll mention words and what they look like. on someone's mouth. And so suddenly I would just stop and like have to go look in the mirror and be like, oh, it does look like that.
I was wondering how the author would
That's really cool.
How the author would describe something that's visual in nature and in a writing type of format.
Yeah.
Sounds like that is extremely, and it's very kind of, it takes place in Australia. It's very atmospheric and kind of that place as well. All right, Piepie. You also have a couple others that you want to talk about. What's the next one on your list?
My next one is And There He Kept Her by Joshua Moling. I heard about this from Heather Gudenkoff. She's another suspense author that I love, and she has been promoting this book and supporting Joshua, and I think that's really neat. So I had to read it. The premise is teenagers break into a house of an elderly man and things go terribly wrong from there. It's small town Minnesota. It's creepy, chilling, that gritty factor that people like in their thrillers. The main character is a sheriff's deputy, Ben Packard, and he's quietly gay. He's not publicly out yet. So you have that element to the storyline. It's very fast paced. The sequel comes out in August, and I'm really excited. I'm loving this series.
It's kind of the start of a new series featuring an interesting character. And
he's a new author. Great backstories for his characters. So if you like that, that's what you're getting in this series.
And the author, I've read this one as well, and the author does a great job of presenting kind of LGBTQ issues in kind of this rural community and how it's just kind of woven into the fabric. And it's not like special or stood out. It just is what it is.
It's you know, a thriller, you know, those kind of gory elements, but the writing is really beautiful. It's done really well.
And you have another book that you wanted to talk about that is also kind of rural in nature. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, I'd actually like to talk about the Alex Carter series by Alice Henderson. Book number 1 is A Solitude of Wolverines. Alice Henderson herself is a wildlife biologist, and that's the career that she's given her main character. And Alice really knows her stuff. It's very evident. And so you're getting a whole bunch of science elements in this series. It's a really good set of books if you like to learn something when you're reading, even though it's, you know, fiction. There's definitely science, technology, things of that nature.
Now, normally whenever I think of crime thrillers and science, I'm thinking like forensics and kind of NCIS type stuff. Does it kind of go in that category, or is this something different?
I would say it's more along the lines of science, ecology, conservation. You know, there's threats against Alex's life, you know, people stalking her. She's battling the wilderness as well as, you know, these threats against her life. So sort of man versus nature a little bit.
So it's not only a mystery, but also kind of a bit of a survival tale as well?
Right.
That's
and
cool.
Every title has a different animal, and she studies different animals in each book. So it's a very interesting read.
That's great. And what was the name of the first book in that series?
A Solitude of Wolverines, and book number 4 comes out in the fall. So you have plenty of time to catch up.
Now, all of these books sound absolutely amazing. And again, if you ever want to get a complete list, go to our website, jocolibrary.org/uncovered. We'll have a full list of these so you can put your books on hold. I always like to end these collection deep dives by talking about a book that is coming out shortly on this topic. The one that I would like to talk about is I'm Not Done With You Yet by Jessie Q. Sutanto. Now, some of you may be familiar with Sutanto's work. She came out with one a few years ago called Dial A for Aunties. It is a mystery, but it also with a main character with several kind of nosy Asian aunties looking over her shoulder. It's a mystery, but it was also kind of a romantic comedy a little bit with a lot of meddling relatives. She comes out with another one earlier this year called Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, moving out of the comedy aspect and moving a little bit more into the straight-ahead mystery. Now, this new one, this I'm Not Done With You Yet, involves the main character is a writer who kind of graduated from college and is trying to make her way and isn't really terribly successful. She, back in her college days, she had a best friend who kind of met a tragic and mysterious end, but years later, this friend emerges on top of the New York Times bestseller list with a new book that's about that tragic happening in college. And this author is really interested in connecting back up with our main character, who has some secrets of her own. So it's kind of this dynamic between the two women. and all of these kind of mysteries that are unraveling between them. It is very much in the psychological thriller aspect of it, which still, even years past Gone Girl, still dominating the bestseller list. I'm Not Done With You Yet by Jesse Q. Sutanto. Out soon, so place your holds now.
This sounds so good.
Yeah. So Piepie and Bet, I really want to thank you both for joining us here today, and thank you for sharing your titles with us.
My pleasure. It was fun.
Yeah. And now I have to get all of Piepie's books.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Don't go anywhere. There's more Joco Library Uncovered to come.
So if you enjoyed today's topic, you might be interested in these recommendations from our collection. First, A Charles's Choice. And today I am recommending Hell is Empty by Craig Johnson. So Craig Johnson, you might know, is the author of the long-running Longmire series. They have a TV show that they have now has run its full course, but that was based off of the character. He's a Wyoming sheriff, and most of his books fall more on the mystery side of things. This one stands out to me, though, because there's really not much of a mystery. It's a prisoner transfer gone wrong, and the convicts escape into the Bighorn Mountains during a snowstorm. And Walt Longmire is on the scene for the prisoner transfer, and he's the only law enforcement person who's there, and everybody else is stuck down at the base of the mountain while the snowstorm is going on. And he decides he's going to head off by himself with just his rifle to track down and apprehend all of the criminals that have escaped. So,
Wow.
It's a thriller book. It's nonstop action, and I think you could even read it as a standalone if you haven't read the rest of the Longmire series.
Okay, great.
Next up, we've got a Dave's Double Feature.
Well, hey, very predictable. I'm going to send you over to Kanopy. There's a section on Kanopy called Thrillers, and within that section, there are a lot of really great titles. I am constantly amazed at how many Academy Award-winning films and winners of other awards reside on Kanopy, and it's there with just your library card. And so I suggest... I love the Coen brothers. I really do. I'm a big fan, and No Country for Old Men is an excellent movie. And the cast is pretty amazing with Tommy Lee Jones and Woody Harrelson and Josh Brolin. But what makes the movie for me is Javier Bardem. His villain is just the creepiest.
So creepy.
Oh my gosh. Amazing film. And so I highly encourage you to check that out if you really like the genre of thrillers for movies. And then I'm also going to suggest one that's a little bit older. It's about 23 years old now, Memento, which stars Guy Pearce. And it's a unique movie, and I think that's probably what I appreciate it more than anything else, that it's a non-traditional narrative style that I don't feel like I can talk any more about because it gives away the kind of gimmick or the specialness of this movie. But it's just it's one of those that you can't predict the plot, and I think that's a rarity sometimes. So those are my two suggestions.
Well, to check out those recommendations and to get a full list of our book report recommendations for the episode, you can go to our webpage, jocolibrary.org/uncovered.
Joco Library Uncovered.
So I think my takeaway from that kind of discussion that Greg got into with mystery versus thriller and how I think about it when I'm helping our patrons in the branches is that there are two sides to the same coin. The mysteries tend to lean more towards that logical side, that prefrontal cortex type thing where you're thinking through the logic of a situation and trying to come up with an answer to a question. Whereas the thriller, that hits the amygdala, the fight or flight emotional responses of your brain. And it's more that visceral type of genre that draws so many people in. I think that's a big draw to the thriller genre, is that it is so visceral and you feel the emotion of the characters and the situations that they're placed in, and the action just keeps going. And even if you're not an avid reader, a lot of people can get drawn into that kind of story. And I think that's a great thing. And I'm looking for, I actually added like half of those things on the recommendations today. I've added those to my to be read list.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty interesting that we've had 2 different episodes where that title, Razorblade Tears, easy for me to say, has come up, and now I'm very curious, and I think I've got to take a stab at reading that one. Oh,
yeah,
that's very thrilling.
JoCo Library Uncovered is a production of Johnson County Library and is recorded at the Central Resource Library in Overland Park, Kansas. We would love to read your thoughtful emails at uncovered@jocolibrary.org. Join our online conversation at facebook.com/JoCo Library. Look for us on Twitter at JoCo Library. Our website is jocolibrary.org. Subscribe to JoCo Library Uncovered through your favorite podcatcher or go to jocolibrary.podbean.com. Thanks for listening, and come back in 2 weeks for more JoCo Library Uncovered.